Not all conspiracy theories are born out of paranoia or wild imaginations. Some of them, as shocking as it sounds, have roots in real events that powerful people tried to keep hidden. In today's video, we'll uncover some of the darkest, most unbelievable conspiracy theories that turned out to be chillingly true. From mind control experiments by the CIA to government health cover-ups, these stories will make you question everything you think you know. Let's dive in. Our first conspiracy is a dark chapter in US history, one that involves secret CIA experiments that aim to control minds. This was known as Project MK-Ultra, a classified program launched in the early 1950s to experiment with methods of mind control. It all began with Cold War paranoia. The US government feared that Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean agents were using mind control on American prisoners of war. The CIA, driven by these fears, launched MK-Ultra to experiment with psychological and chemical manipulation on unwitting subjects. The CIA used powerful hallucinogens like LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and even psychological torture. The idea was to create techniques to extract information from prisoners, control minds, or even program assassins. Perhaps the most chilling part of this conspiracy is that the CIA often performed these experiments on unwitting people, including patients in mental hospitals, prisoners, and even ordinary citizens. They used LSD to alter these people's consciousness, sometimes leaving them scarred for life. One of the most famous cases is that of Frank Olson, a scientist who worked on these experiments. After an unexpected LSD trip that he didn't consent to, Olson experienced severe paranoia and ultimately fell, or was pushed, from a New York hotel window. Many believe his death wasn't an accident, but a cover-up by the CIA to keep the project secret. MK-Ultra shows the disturbing lengths a government can go in the name of national security. But it's far from the only dark secret to come to light. Our next story reveals an equally horrifying experiment. In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service launched a study that would become one of the most shameful chapters in American medical history. This was the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, an experiment that ran for 40 years, keeping hundreds of black men sick without treatment, all for the sake of medical data. The government promised 600 African American men from Tuskegee, Alabama, free healthcare and treatment. Instead, the Public Health Service used them to study the effects of untreated syphilis. They were never told they had syphilis or given proper treatment, even when penicillin became widely available. Doctors even lied to participants, conducting regular exams and pretending to treat them while simply observing the progression of their disease. These men went home, infecting families, suffering and dying without ever knowing the truth. The study continued until 1972, when it was finally exposed by a whistleblower. The public was outraged, families sued the government, and this scandal fueled massive distrust in public health programs. An apology came from President Clinton decades later, but the damage was irreversible.
To our African American citizens, I am sorry that your federal government orchestrated a study so clearly racist. That can never be allowed to happen again. It is against everything our country stands for.
The Tuskegee Syphilis Study showed how far institutions can go to pursue their own agendas, disregarding the lives of those they claim to serve. But even this pales in comparison to our next story, which brought down a president. Our next conspiracy reached the highest office in the land, exposing corruption in the presidency itself. The Watergate scandal began with a simple break-in, but spiraled into one of the biggest political cover-ups in history. In June 1972, 5 men were arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. Initially, it looked like a typical burglary, but reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein uncovered connections that led back to President Nixon's re-election committee. With mounting evidence and secret recordings from the Oval Office, it became clear that President Nixon himself had tried to cover up the break-in. He'd even ordered his aides to use hush money to keep people silent. Nixon eventually resigned to avoid impeachment, the first president in U.S. history to do so.
From the discussions I have had with congressional and other leaders, I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require.
Watergate exposed a level of corruption and manipulation that shocked the American people and redefined the public's view of political power. Watergate is one of the most well-known scandals, but our next story dives into the bizarre world of science gone wrong, at the expense of innocent people. After World War II, nuclear fallout became a major concern, and the US government began quietly researching its effects. This led to a horrifying practice known as Project Sunshine. Unbeknownst to the public, the government was secretly collecting human remains for testing. The government wanted to study how radiation affected human tissue, but they needed samples, so they turned to deceased infants and children, often taking samples from cadavers without the family's knowledge or consent. In some cases, families would bury their loved ones without knowing that organs, even limbs, had been removed. The bodies of infants and young children were especially valuable for these experiments due to their vulnerability to radiation. This dark secret came to light decades later, leaving families outraged and heartbroken. Project Sunshine revealed just how far the government was willing to go in the name of scientific progress, even if it meant violating basic human rights. From mind control to body snatching, these stories reveal a reality that's often stranger and darker than any fiction. As we've seen, not all conspiracy theories are baseless or paranoid. Some reveal hidden truths that, once exposed, force us to question who we can trust. If these stories shocked you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. These are the kinds of truths everyone should know, and we'll keep uncovering them one story at a time. Thanks for watching, and until next time, may God keep you and yours safe from harm. Check out our other videos for more deep dives into true crime and history's darkest mysteries.